What up? Welcome to another video of Dynasty Football Dads, where we give you Dynasty football advice here daily. Please subscribe if you're new to the channel so you can get updated on each and every upload. We are doing wide receivers 6 through 12. We did wide receivers 1 through 5 in an earlier video, and if you missed that, it was Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, and Stephon Diggs. So we're going to start off number 6 here with DK Metcalf. Honestly, DK Metcalf is... he's an physically imposing wide receiver at 6'4", 229 pounds. He's only 23 years old, so he's super young. And a lot of these wide receivers on this list are in that age category. You're looking at wide receivers and you're trying to predict the next 4, 5, 6 years of production, hopefully in a wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 category. And DK Metcalf has Russell Wilson. We see that Tyler Lockett is this boomer bust type of player. We saw DK Metcalf, though, struggle towards the end of the year. They really struggled towards the end. And his first half, he was like wide receiver 1. His second half, you could just see him fall off here. But his 2 years, he was 30th and he was 5th last year. So he's 5th last year in fantasy football, which is a really good season. He had 1,303 yards. He had 83 receptions. He had 10 touchdowns. He played against my Vikings and destroyed them. So a lot of different things that he did really well during the entire season. Just ultimately, that's what it was. So he's not as safe as maybe a A.J. Brown, which I think is going to be a more alpha in that offense, and an offense that I think we'll just utilize him more properly than DK Metcalf. There's some times where they just don't utilize him the way they need to, and they end up throwing a lot to Tyler Lockett or throwing a lot and using the tight end a lot in that offense, which just puts him down just a hair, but ultimately had a really good year. We're nitpicking at this point. We're nitpicking between 4, 5, 6, 7, like we have to at this point. But he is my number 6. My number 7, and this could be too low, it really could be, with CeeDee Lamb being 21 years young. He's going to turn 22 here in about a month and a half, 2 months. Actually, just after, so my wife is due April 5th, so April 8th. So right afterwards, or maybe right on. But anyways, he had 935 yards and 5 touchdowns on 74 receptions. And ultimately, this is where I'm looking for him to have that second year jump. He was 20th in fantasy production, which is not a bad season, but we are looking for a guy that is going to have hopefully a competent quarterback in Dak Prescott for most of next year. And if you have Dak Prescott next year, CeeDee Lamb could be that wide receiver that we are talking about that makes that jump where you're looking and going, wow, he was wide receiver 5 his sophomore year. Kind of like how DK Metcalf made that jump, how A.J. Brown has made some of those jumps. I could really try to say that 2 times fast. CeeDee Lamb. I could envision CeeDee Lamb finishing as that top 5 wide receiver his sophomore year. So this might be too low for him. Maybe it's just right for him, but number 7 on my list. He is incredibly talented. My favorite wide receiver coming out of the 2020 draft. In fact, him and Justin Jefferson, I'd rather have easily over any of the 2021 wide receivers or any of the other 2020 wide receivers. Those two stand alone. My number 8 prospect, well, not prospect, I guess we're not doing rookies, but my number 8 wide receiver at this point, and the reason why he's just so low is because he's turning 29 before the season, is DeAndre Hopkins. He's incredible. He switches teams. He's had sometimes no quarterback, and he had 1,407 yards. The biggest concern, the biggest problem, I guess you could say, is he only had 6 touchdowns. So that can be an issue because they do spread the ball around a lot there, and then Kyler Murray likes to rush those in as well. But you look at Hopkins, he had 160 targets, so 10 per game. You're looking at very safe target line. And ultimately, if you look at DeAndre Hopkins, you could see him having a season like he did this last year for the next couple of years. And his finishes have been 15th, 6th, 1st, 36th, 1st, 4th, 10th, 10th. You could see him being a top 5 to 10 wide receiver. So you see him finish at wide receiver 8, 6, 5, 4, like in that range. And it wouldn't shock me. DeAndre Hopkins is super safe, and he's only going to be 28 going to 29. I could see him doing this till he's about that 31, 32 range. You're talking about 3-ish more years easily, I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, I think personally, is probably the most talented wide receiver in the NFL, the most complete wide receiver. Adams and Hill are close, but DeAndre Hopkins is so good. Sometimes they just don't they target him, but it's bad targets. It's just Arizona can be a mess at sometimes, and that's, I think, sometimes Cliff Kingsbury's fault, not Hopkins' fault. But anyways, next wide receiver, number 9, is going to be Chris Godwin. And Chris Godwin is one of those players that you look at his fantasy finishes and you go 69th, 25th, 2nd, 30th. What is the outlier? The outlier is 2. The outlier is 2020 or 2019 season. So what would you say, like, what is going forward? Well, I really like Chris Godwin's talent-wise. I think, again, talent, he was a 3rd-round pick. He was injured this last year, only played 12 games, had 840 yards, 7 touchdowns. It'll just be interesting to see where he lands going forward. Is he going to be on Tampa Bay, or is he going to be on a different team? Because I think, personally, he's going to stay at Tampa Bay, and I think Antonio Brown's going to leave. That could flip-flop. You could see Chris Godwin go into and be an alpha on his own on a different offense. Either way, I think 9 is a good spot to have Chris Godwin. He's only 24. He's turning 25 on February 27th, so he's going to turn 25. But again, another 4 or 5 years of easy production in my mind for Chris Godwin. That's where I put him. And so now this is where probably the hardest person to judge is for number 10. He's a wide receiver that has had amazing production. He's a wide receiver that has been hurt this last year. He's also a wide receiver that we don't know who his quarterback is going to be potentially next year. It is Michael Thomas. He is 27, going to be 28 here in a month. So again, we're getting closer to that 30 range and stuff, but Michael Thomas is somebody that that started his career awesome with over 1,100 yards, then went to 1,200 to 1,400 to 1,700, and then this last season played 7 games, had 438 yards and no touchdowns, 0 touchdowns. In fact, he finished 103rd in fantasy. So we got 9, 8, 8, 1, 103. And you could say, well, that is the outlier. 103 is the outlier, which makes sense. But we have still those big questions are, he was really banged up and really unhealthy towards the end of the year. Like, he might need some surgeries and stuff. Also, we don't know who his quarterback is. If it's Hale, then we know that his production is not going to be up to that level that I think he was with Breeze. I could see Michael Thomas having a resurgence here, but is the wide receiver top 5 production kind of gone? And he only had it for 1 year. He was mostly 9 or 8. Could I see another 9 or 8 season? Yeah, I could see another 9 or 8 season. That's why he's up here. But do I see that being the next couple of years? I could see him being more of a solid wide receiver 2. Gets 1,100 yards, gets 7, 8 touchdowns, and you're fine with him. But you're not going to get the wide receiver 1 production you did in 2019, where he was 1,700 yards, 9 touchdowns, had 185 targets. I just don't see those things happening. I see more of the 130 targets, which is more consistent with the rest of his career. So that's where I have Michael Thomas. He's definitely it could definitely change. They get a quarterback there. They get a good quarterback, good passing quarterback, and that could definitely change. And the Saints are one of the hardest teams to judge right now. Their money issue too, their cap issue is really bad. So I don't know what they're gonna do. They're gonna need to get the genie and get 3 wishes or something, because it's gonna need to happen. My number 11, number 12 are super close again, but DJ Moore is 23 years old, and he's my number 11. And ultimately, he has improved every single year in fantasy. I mean, 38th, 21st, 17th. You get a guy who is 23, going to be 24 in a couple months here. But again, you get a guy that is going to be a mid wide receiver 2 and going to have a couple of years where he's going to get wide receiver 1 abilities. I mean, he was drafted high. I think Carolina is going to either draft a rookie or they're going to have a new quarterback in Carolina. Somebody's going to be there besides Teddy Bridgewater. So that being said, I think DJ Moore is going to be utilized better in the offense. Curtis Samuel is not going to be there. I think CMC is only going to help. The biggest issue with DJ Moore is touchdowns. I mean, he only had 4 last year, and that was off of almost 1,200 yards. And I know that he's almost one of those surprising guys that you look at the end of the year and you go, wait, he had 1,200 yards? That was the quietest 1,200 yards that I've ever seen. And that was off the 66 receptions, so he is a bigger play wide receiver, and he does tend to have some of these games that he just blows up, and then some of these games that he just disappears. But he also had 1,100 yards last year, and these were both in 15 games, so he missed a game. So he was probably pretty close to getting into that late 12s, almost 1,300 yards. But 3 years, he has played 46 games, and he has 10 touchdowns. That's just not going to cut it out to be a top 8-9 receiver. He needs more touchdowns. They ultimately need to figure that out, and hopefully he can. You would look at regression or progression to the mean, and you would think, well, if he's had 335 targets, he's going to have more than 10 touchdowns. So I see that progressing to the mean, but I also know that I don't think he can regress. Like, you can't get worse than that for 4 touchdowns. I just don't see that happening. So I think you're talking about 4 and up for touchdowns. And ultimately, for DJ Moore, again, almost going to be 24 here. You're talking about a safe wide receiver 2 floor with wide receiver 1 upside if they find the good quarterback and they utilize, and he gets more touchdowns. He gets 5-6 more touchdowns, and he's got 1,200 yards and 8-9 touchdowns, and we're talking about a end of wide receiver 1, which is fine where wide receiver 11 is at. Like, sometimes you just have to bank on what you're going to get for the future for the next 5 years. And so my next wide receiver, if my thing loads, hopefully, I know it's Terry McLaurin. It's Terry McLaurin. He's 25, will be 26 right in the beginning of the season and here in September. Again, I really like Terry McLaurin. He is one of his separation and route running is just amazing. He just needs a quarterback that can actually get him the ball. Alex Smith, Dwayne Haskins, like, these are just, and I'm trying to think, former Viking, played in the playoffs. I can't think of his name. Taylor Heineke. So he just needs a quarterback that can actually get him the ball, because he had 134 targets. He had 1,118 yards, but again, 4 touchdowns. Same problem as DJ Moore. Both of them need quarterbacks. Both of them have a lot of targets, and both kind of have touchdown issues. Terry did have 7 touchdowns his rookie year, but only 919 yards. If you look at Terry McLaurin's finishes, 24th and 23rd. 2, I guess, if you're in 12-team leagues, 2 late wide receiver 2 finishes. I'm looking for him to, when he gets a quarterback, to jump into that higher wide receiver 2, low wide receiver 1 category. So we're looking, again, predicting the future more than we did the past. And we see that these both players are these two are like my favorite players to jump forward into that high wide receiver 2 category and have a couple wide receiver 1s. There's going to be, I think, a year or two for at least both of them to have a wide receiver 1 category. Besides CeeDee Lamb, but CeeDee Lamb's just he's going to be expensive. I mean, he's amazing, and so I think that CeeDee Lamb could be the next, more like DeAndre Hopkins, where you're going to have a guy that's going to have 3, 4, 5, 6 years of potential wide receiver 1 or high wide receiver 2 type seasons, and that's why Lamb is higher than Moore and McLaurin. Please comment if you think I left anybody out. Please subscribe, as we're doing videos daily, and just to keep up with the channel here. Thank you everyone for the support so far, and I will see you tomorrow.